Commander Ian Straoud never imagined his war would end with babysitting. After 15 years in the Terran Peace Corps, he was hoping for nothing more dramatic than a quiet posting. Yet here he was, sweat prickling beneath his battered armor, marching through the acrid, bustling port city of Sildra Prime. The scent of spiced plasma gel and engine coolant stung his senses as he muttered, "Stay close, Bolt." The sleek German shepherd at his side flicked an ear, tails swishing as they cut a path through weary Salari civilians. The Treaty of Accord was fresh ink, less than a season old and fragile as glass. At first, nothing seemed unusual until a soft melodic voice spoke up. "Excuse me, human sir." Ian looked down in disbelief at three Salari children, their skin iridescent green, violet hair coiled in elaborate braids, and silken dresses far too fine for this part of the spaceport. For a fleeting moment their wide, luminous eyes met his, reflecting both fear and hope. "We are lost," the eldest Era spoke calmly. "Our guardian vanished in the crowd. We cannot find the way back to the Grand Plaza." Ian's jaw tightened. This area still bristled with resentment. Humans weren't welcome, and neither, it seemed, were royal children. He should walk away. It would be easy. But as Nema, the youngest, shivered in a shadow and still clung to her sister, he found himself crouching instead, ignoring the burn of old memories. "All right, I'll get you to safety, but don't touch anything and don't stray from my side." "What are your names?" he asked, leading them away from the thickest crowds as Bolt fell into a silent, protective march at their rear. Introductions were exchanged. The children trusted him, perhaps because there was nothing else to trust in this moment of vulnerability. And as they made their way deeper into the winding labyrinth of Sildra Prime, the first trace of something stronger than fear flickered, a fragile hope. Ian led the three Salari children, Era, Sil, and Nema, through tangled alleys humming with tension. Bolt padded quietly behind, his head turning at any sound. As dusk crept further, the energy of the city shifted, market lights blinked out, and the usual chatter faded into tight-lipped whispers. Ian kept his hand poised near his old combat sidearm, the sense of danger never leaving his spine. "Is Bolt a war animal?" Era asked, her eyes still wide but sparkling with curiosity. "He's a friend," Ian replied, glancing down and managing the faintest smile. "And yes, he's seen battle. He saved my life more times than I can count." The children didn't reply, but Sil's hand found Bolt's fur, gripping gently as they moved. Their progress was slow. Avoidance had a price. Ian skirted clusters of Salari adults, weaving a route that kept them away from both rowdy spacers and suspicious shopkeepers. Occasionally, a whispered Salari word trailed after them. Insults and suspicions, reminders that humans walking free on Sildra Prime was a novelty barely tolerated. Ian ignored them, focused entirely on his charges. Minutes stretched into an hour. The winding route meant to keep them safe brought them closer to the industrial edge, where city walls loomed pale against the copper twilight. Suddenly, as they neared the merchant quarter, the atmosphere snapped taut. Doors slammed shut. Traders hurriedly packed their stalls. Even the usual swarm of drones zipped away as a loudspeaker crackled overhead, piping an announcement in both Salari and clipped English. "All citizens, public gathering suspended. Official decree, return to your dwellings." The children shrank closer to Ian. "Is that for us?" Nema whimpered. He shook his head, voice gentle despite its gruffness. "It's precaution, not punishment. But we should stay hidden until things settle here." He guided the trio beneath the overhang of a loading dock, the concrete cool against their backs, and gestured for them to sit. Bolt curled beside them, all watchful eyes and twitching ears. "What's it like being a human in the Salari capital?" Sil asked softly, breaking the silence. Ian hesitated. "Strange. A bit like wearing someone else's armor. Never sure if it fits or if a crack will show at the worst moment. I suppose you girls know that feeling." The children nodded. For them, exile among their own people felt just as alien. They slumped tiredly, the day's stress closing in, and Nema asked, "Can we stay close just for a moment?" Ian hesitated but finally agreed. The three bunched around him with innocent trust, heads resting against armor and one another. In the deepening blue of night, surrounded by foreignness and memory, the soldier who had faced guns and monsters realized what real vulnerability could look like. Soft, trusting, and fleeting. As a child's hug, he stared at the maze of alleys beyond, mind racing. Trouble was clearly brewing, but for the first time since the end of the war, Ian felt something shift inside. A fragile, dangerous hope nested in the arms of the next generation. Ian awoke to the cold tingle of metal against his skin. His eyes darted open. Half a dozen Salari royal guards in shimmering armor stood over him, blades poised. Bolt hackles up amid a low, warning growl. "Do not move, human," came a sharp command in clipped English. At Ian's side, the three girls were still curled against him, fast asleep and oblivious to the standoff. The guards parted, and a tall figure strode forward, stately and unmistakable. Empress Lyrian herself, her emerald skin darker, her presence magnetic, her eyes appraising Ian with the icy assurance of a ruler. Well, her voice was both melodic and commanding. "This is certainly not what I expected to find." Ian shifted carefully, easing the sleepy girls onto the ground. "Your Majesty," he began, bowing stiffly. "Commander Ian Straoud, Terran Peace Corps. I found your daughters lost in the port. I only meant to keep them safe." He spoke clearly, voice honest if wary. There would be no way out of this without the truth. Lyrian's gaze never wavered. And yet, against every protocol, they chose to trust a human stranger. "Tell me, Commander, what did you do to earn this?" There was steel behind her words, but also just for a heartbeat, a glimmer of relief. "I protected them." "That's all," Ian replied, matching her candor. "Honestly, I don't know why they trusted me. Maybe because I was the only one stopping to listen." The air hung thick while the guards tensed, waiting for a royal order. Bolt was still, but his eyes blazed, ready to defend at the slightest move. Unexpectedly, the Empress's lips curled in a slight appreciative smile. "Courage, then, or perhaps stubborn goodwill. I suppose my daughters inherited both." At her side, Era stirred awake, recognizing her mother and instantly springing up. "Mother!" she cried out in joy. And soon all three girls were babbling at once, crowding around Lyrian and peppering her with breathless reassurances that the human captain had watched over them. The tension in the air deflated a little, replaced by whispers among the guards and a questioning tilt in the Empress's posture. Lyrian bent down to embrace her daughters, a rare display of vulnerability, before straightening and studying Ian with new interest. "Commander Straoud, our peace is newborn and delicate. There are many who would see it broken on both sides. Perhaps," she paused, deliberate, "perhaps our court would benefit from one who can bridge what war has divided." Ian stiffened, taken aback by her proposal. He stammered, "Your Majesty, I'm a soldier, not a statesman." Lyrian's rich laughter echoed, warming the chill. "Exactly. I have statesmen in abundance. What I need is honesty and someone who can see through the masks, one my daughters already trust. Serve here at court. Be my Terran liaison for now." Era gazed up at Ian, hope lighting her face. He hesitated, but in the eyes of the Empress and those of the children, he caught a glimpse of a future unimagined by treaties, a peace built one real act of trust at a time. Life at the Imperial Palace was nothing like Ian had imagined. Gold-inlaid corridors pulsed with secrets and double meanings. Each official greeting masked careful judgment. Yet it was in the quiet, early mornings in the sapphire-lit royal gardens, sparring in secluded training courts with Empress Lyrian, that Ian found a strange comfort. Each lesson blurred the lines between duty and something far more intimate. "You're too rigid, Commander," she chided, gliding around him with the lethal grace of a dancer. "Among my people, strength is not in resisting force, but in flowing with it." Ian managed a wry smirk. "Guess I never learned how to bend," he replied, letting her guide his arms with hands that lingered a little too warmly. Sometimes her touch was only instructional. Other times, Ian sensed a heat that had nothing to do with sparring. After one particularly close exchange, her breath danced against his ear just as a palace alarm shrieked, shattering the fragile tension. Lyrian stiffened. All playfulness replaced by command. A security breach. We need to check the gardens. The princesses are there now. Ian didn't waste a second, bolting from the arena, Bolt close at his heels. They tore through painted halls, reaching the garden pavilion to find chaos. Palace guards down. 3 figures in camo field suits advancing on the huddled princesses and their tutor. Ian didn't hesitate. He tackled the nearest foe. His moves swift and precise, borrowed from both Terran combat and the Salari techniques he'd learned. Bolt lunged at a second attacker, teeth bared. Lyrian joined the fray, dispatching a mercenary with calm efficiency. The skirmish lasted less than a minute. The attackers were neutralized. Era, Syl, and Nema sprinted from their hiding spot into Ian's arms, their tears mixing with shock and fierce pride. The tutor stammered his gratitude. Lyrian's cool exterior softened as she checked her daughters for injury, then turned to Ian, her expression complicated. "You disobeyed protocol," she scolded quietly. Ian met her gaze, unwavering, voice low. "I don't leave children in danger, Highness, not for anyone's rules." Her smile was small but significant. "Neither do I for a moment." The burden of royalty slipped. She was simply a mother, grateful and proud. The guard's presence saluted Ian in Salari fashion. As silence settled, Lyrian clasped one of his hands in both of hers, her touch lingering. "Trust like this," she murmured, "is what will outlast our laws." That night, as Ian paced his guest quarters, memories of the Empress's lingering touch and the children's trust wavered inside him, stirring an ache he hadn't imagined possible. For the first time, he wondered if the line between peace and love was thinner than anyone realized. Days passed, and trust in Commander Straoud deepened. The princesses trailed after him between his duties, asking endless questions about Terran customs and confounding half the court with their newfound enthusiasm for human games. At night, Ian would sometimes pause outside his own quarters, smile at the echo of their laughter, and wonder how his life had shifted so far from battlefields, yet felt even more precarious. One evening, as Ian shared stories in the princess's brightly decorated chamber, Era grew solemn. "Commander," she whispered, "we heard Lord Veer and Lady Jara in the garden. They said bad things about you, about Mother, about a plan." Syl nodded, face pale. "They want to take the throne, and they said when it happens, no one in this wing will be safe." A chill ran through Ian's veins. He pressed gently, coaxing more detail with a calm that hid his alarm. The girls described secret meetings and a tunnel hidden behind the library, one they'd discovered by accident. Ian pieced it together quickly. The previous attack had been a distraction, not the main event. A real coup was coming, and it would strike soon. He wasted no time. Quietly rousing Bolt, Ian slipped through the palace after midnight, following the girls' directions. In the shadows behind a ventilation grate, he listened. Lord Veer was there with Lady Jara, voices crisp with treason. "The Terran's presence is inconvenient," Veer spat. "We frame Straoud for Lyrian's death, blame the humans, and the alliance shatters." Jara agreed coldly. "And the princesses? Collateral. The bloodline will be purified." Ian's blood ran colder. He backed away and sprinted to Lyrian's private study, bursting in with urgency. She was already alert, arrayed in ceremonial armor. Ian relayed all he'd heard. Lyrian's anger was matched only by her calm logic. "We set a trap tonight." Together, they laid out their plan. Lyrian would feign retire for the night. Ian would appear to leave but double back through the secret tunnels. Loyal guards were quietly redirected. As the hour neared, Ian stood outside Lyrian's door. She adjusted his borrowed Salari armor, fingers lingering above his pulse. For a moment she hesitated. "Do you trust me, Commander?" "Yes," he admitted, voice raw, "completely." The words hung between them, heavy with something beyond duty. She smiled softly, pressing her forehead to his, a Salari gesture of intimacy. "Then let's end this together." At midnight, Lord Veer and his conspirators slipped into the bedchamber, weapons poised. But Ian was waiting. A fierce struggle erupted. The battle was quick, but Ian and Lyrian, side by side, took down the traitors with ruthless efficiency. The princesses, watching from concealment, blocked Lady Jara's attempt to escape with childish ingenuity, shoving a heavy urn into a secret passage. When the din faded, Veer and Jara were subdued and the guards rushed in. Ian was left bleeding but triumphant as the princesses rushed to his side. Lyrian knelt beside him, voice trembling but proud. "Thank you, Ian, for my daughters, for all of us." A month after the foiled coup, the imperial palace of Sildra Prime shone with the brilliance of a world reborn. Dignitaries from every corner of the empire, Salari and Terran alike, filled the grand hall, eager witnesses to the new chapter unfolding before them. Commander Ian Straoud stood tall beside Empress Lyrian, his wounds mended and ceremonial Salari armor now crafted to fit him perfectly. The princesses, resplendent in their formal attire, sat to their mother's right, each exchanging grins and making faces at Bolt, who solemnly wore a sash of honor near Ian's feet. As silence swept the room, Lyrian rose. Her presence commanded awe, but her gaze lingered warmly on her daughters and Ian. Today we celebrate not merely the survival of our family, nor the unmasking of traitors. We celebrate the courage to trust beyond hatred, the decision to see each other as more than enemies. She extended a hand to Ian, inviting him to step forward. Ian's heart pounded. Lyrian's words reached further than the hall. They rang out as a promise. Commander Straoud, once a stranger on our soil, showed bravery beyond the battlefield. He became protector of my daughters, shield against danger, confidant of our hearts. According to the ancient laws, the ruler may choose a consort from any world, any people, if they prove devotion through acts of exceptional valor and loyalty. A murmur rippled through the dignitaries. Lyrian smiled, her voice intimate despite the grandeur. "I call upon that law now." She offered her hand, palm up in the Salari way, a gesture of partnership and trust. Ian accepted, intertwining his fingers with hers, blending Terran touch and alien tradition. The hall erupted in applause. The princesses rushed forward, breaking with ceremony, and hugged their mother and Ian in a bundle of joy and hope. Bolt barked twice approvingly, tail wagging in pride. Later, as the festivities unfolded and the new alliance was sealed with joyous celebration, Ian found himself alone, with Lyrian on a quiet terrace. The city below pulsed with light. She smiled at him, content and unmasked. "Are you frightened?" she teased softly. He shook his head. "A different man than the one who once saw peace as fragile as glass. Not anymore. Now I understand. Strength isn't in fighting against the unknown, but in letting new things grow." Lyrian's hand found his. "You changed our lives, Ian, more than any law or treaty could." Her lips brushed his softly. "The girls have already decided your family. You're really going to disappoint 3 princesses." He laughed, the sound unburdened and free. "I wouldn't dare, but we'll have to see if I can keep up with all 4 of you." She pressed her forehead to his in that Salari sign of trust and intimacy. And for the first time, the future felt unburdened by war or loss. Around them, the night whispered of unions once thought impossible, of a new dawn, bright and boundless, waiting for the world they would build together.